Hello. I'm gonna do a cringe tier list for the start of the set because everyone seems to do it, and I actually can't undo it. I don't know why I called it cringe just a second ago. We're at a very good point with Lorcana now, where one color combination can have kind of a plethora of decks. Now, I can have quite a lot of decks. So when you've got ones like Purple Steel, there's gonna be ones like Doc, the mid-rangey one with the Robin Hoods, the aggro-y ones with the aggro one with Doc that's just like dump hands and draw cards with the Chromacon. You'll have the sort of the other aggro one that Spessy sort of made in set four, was it? Yeah, well, we're in set five, so it would have been set four. So yeah, we're quite lucky and quite fortunate to have sort of things even with Steel, Amber Steel. You've got a hero-based version of the deck which focuses around using heroes, and you've got the just the standard one right now we see with Daisy and stuff like that. And when I do each one on the tier list, I'll make sure to mention which version of the deck, which deck in that color combination I'm talking about, and I'll go over the ones as well that I think and where they would stand. So like where Hero Song would stand, which I don't particularly count too meta-y, but I'm gonna say that and then lose to it a bunch of times because that's how this game works. But yeah, we'll start away with the Amber Steel one. And as I say, you've got in there the standard Steel song, which is the one using Daisy, all the shift lines, a lot of songs in there. I'm going to mention as well, you have the flutes, you have Pride Lands, but that's all still Steel song. It's just sort of changing their win con a little bit. So yeah, I'll mention, I've straight away put it at S tier. Um, I will mention Hero Song. I don't know where that would stand on this tier list because I just don't think it's that meta viable, but it's interesting using Philosophy or Phil or whatever it's called to get your card draw and get your lore as well. But yeah, we're just going to do one I mentioned for each color combo. So starting with Steel Song, yeah, Daisy is instead of using flutes and Pride Land, seems to be the massive win con right now. Completely put that to S tier. On the play, it can just run away with it, getting its singers to dry first, getting the Daisy out, just start questing and getting massive amounts of lore, overwhelming us with just wheels and flooding, just wheeling and just keep drawing cards, and then just playing a bunch of cards, then wheeling again. Bare necessities to keep you sort of off curve, or maybe some cards that you'd like in your hand. You'll see when I talk about decks as well, it's usually I'm thinking about the blue steel matchup. But overall, it's just very good. It doesn't really have Steel Song doesn't really have any bad matchups besides maybe Red Blue, which I'll talk about in a second. But easily an S tier, and why I'm going to put it as S tier as well is every other deck is teching or thinking or editing their lists for this matchup. So when a deck is so good that everyone else has to think about it quite hard, that would mean that the deck's just good. So yeah, and there as well, it's so good, it's not particularly worried if you're going to change your deck too much for it because it just knows it's so powerful. A lot of its cards are just powerful with Daisy, Ariel, all of the shifting cards, the 2-drop Ursula as well. So it just knows it's a good deck. It doesn't really mind if you want to change too much to try and fight against it. It would assume that because when you're S tier, you're basically um, on the chopping block. You're on the wanted poster, the bounty hunter poster, aren't you? People know you're going to be there. You know you're going to take up a large percentage of meta in like an event, and the Steel Song deck's just been quite hyped. And even on the draw, it's not terrible. It still has a few of its problems because it will need to play behind and need to dry behind, but with the shift lines from Robin Hood and things like that, you can sort of make it work. I've even seen the Vanessa Lee Bond thingy, the 2-4, I don't know what, the thing from Wreck-It Ralph, the little girl. There's just another shift line there as well, and to be honest with you, I think that's just like a cheaper version of Robin Hood, because Robin Hood's still expensive, but easily S tier Steel Song. It's making like the meta and all the decks react just from how good it is. Yeah, and we'll go to Red Blue, which I think follows on quite nicely behind it. I don't know if these are interchangeable. I would say not. I'd say Steel Song is sort of has a bad matchup into Red Blue, but it it has a bad matchup into Red Blue. Yeah, I don't think it's as bad as it was. They can still have the power of the wheel, so they can high roll it. I think if you were paired against it, you would still be like, okay, I have a fair run. Steel Song does into Red Blue, but Red Blue really strong, hyper control strong like hyper control lists. Sorry, usually do very well in TCGs. They're focused around sort of stopping you and locking you out of the game, and then they focus on their win con. So they'll lock you out, control the board, and then they'll get their dimes set up and their big questing characters like Tamatoa to just finish the game out. So easily, control, and it's just come along so well. But the only thing I would say that drops it a little bit behind Steel Song is I see it's a lot of store champs, and I don't think it's out of out of the realm to say that this is kind of factual. As it does lose to hyper, it loses to aggro quite a bit, and I'm not just talking about the new functional hyper aggro. Even just some people have got aggro piles will struggle. If you're just going to turn one Lilo, turn one Daisy, of course, would be better. But if you're just going to turn one Lilo and start turning sideways, it doesn't matter really. You need to have quite a perfect A game to deal with that because a lot of the red blue is a very greedy deck. It requires time to set up, time to ramp, time to draw cards. Yeah, time to ramp, time to recover from the ramp with drawing cards. So I can see it just sort of falls behind a little bit just from some of these aggro decks, and you just don't want to be playing against them. And even when it has its Ruby Amethyst matchup, which of course I'll get to Ruby Amethyst as well, they have the option to just be like, right, I'm not going to be the bounce control-y sort of list I am with the red ladies and the be prepared because I don't have to be. I can just start turning sideways, and whilst they're getting their stuff ready, I can get loads of lore. And I don't like the card brawl. I think it's quite negative towards tempo, but you can just take out their draw engine of Hiram with a 3-cost action and continue turning sideways. So I just think it has its issues, and I think still, so like I say, you could take that to a room and kind of be fairly confident into anything you face. But I feel with red blue, you might go in a room and you're like, right, if this is an aggro room, I'll swap decks, or I don't want to be bringing red blue to this room. So I think there's yeah, I think that's sort of the difference between why Steel Song is probably the better one of the two. But still, both S tier decks, and like I say, Hyper Control is very good. Steel Song's just quite well rounded this set with the Daisy coming in, and people got really finalizing the list and having so many sets to practice the deck. I mean, the deck's basically at its core been the same deck since set one, and we've just sort of managed to master it and sculpt it. And the players who've stuck with it have done so well. So yeah, that's the first two I put in S tier. Lemon Lime, I think I will. I mean, I'm just basically putting them one after each other, aren't I? Lemon Lime, I will put that in A tier. I want to put it in S tier, but the problem I find is I play against players, and it's like if they don't beat you down early on, they get that really good, one drop or whatever they need, like maybe a Diablo or just a Kido or just anything, maybe a Cinderella, sorry, 2-drop Ursula, and then they get, the Prince John or whatever they need to start getting their draw package, so maybe shift the Diablo, and then they just, start beating you down with like You Have Forgotten Me, Sing Sudden Chill from the Ursula. If they don't get that, they just fall behind. They need to beat you down and keep you in permanent sort of submission. That's a strong way to put it. And if they don't do that, it just they completely fall behind. On the play, they can do that a lot better because Ariel can dry and a lot of their singers can dry. On the draw, they struggle with it. You need if people are just going to go right. I know you play Under the Sea, so I'm just going to prioritize playing characters that have 2 or more attack. And the Lemon and Lime deck will of course come back and go, okay, I'll take that information in, and now I need to find my Keto. And it can just get complicated, but you can see a lot of amazing players pilot that insanely well. There's so much there. There's so much depth. There's so much skill you can use of it. So I'd love to put it S tier behind these two, but I just feel I mean, if I could put it in like the middle line, I would, but I don't think you can. So yeah, I think it just shyly falls behind it. But still, just a really strong deck, and yeah, I would say just short of the mark, for my opinion, for S tier. So if anyone wants to come after me who's a lemon lime player, I mean no disrespect. Yeah, green purple. I think. I mean, I'm gonna put it here because we haven't got the others to fill it out yet. But the green purple, the tempo deck, I play against probably like the best green purple player. Or like the two I play against is a player called Bennett, who's just amazing. He made top 32 with green purple, and I love seeing that deck. I love seeing the tempo of it. And then I play against Artabax, who's like the grandfather or like the god of green purple. So maybe my opinion of the deck is quite a bit more. I'm not going to say warped, but it's a bit different because I'm playing against people who really know how to play the deck well. But I think it's very good. It's still got loads there. I think the shift big Ursula is great because you play the 2-drop Ursula down early on, and then no one's really going to put effort into removing that. And like recently I played against Artifacts where he's done like Clarabells as well. I think the Clarabelle 1-drop that can destroy items is huge, especially as a blue steel player. They now have a very functional way to get rid of um, like your quill or your dime or whatever it is, compared to before where you could get dime set up and just dime tap things and they could never touch it. And they for some reason tried that. I think it's Wildcat or something like that, which was just awful. It was just so against your game plan for everything, and like item destruction, in my opinion, needs to sort of be functional to your deck. I don't like cards that just bring like it does this thing in a matchup. That's why I never really liked Rise of Titans. It was like you had a bunch of matchups where you never used it. I know you could ink it, which is a great thing in Lorcana, but it was just like here's this card, and you can't use it in like a ton of matchups, but like you might need it once in a full moon. And that's why I've really been enjoying Simba and Kuzco. But we're talking about green purple here, so I'm just gonna stop going on that tangent. But yeah, I really like that with the new Clarabelle cards. They can fill their hand, even if it's not just filling the hand up, because purple has very consistent draw. They have a 5/6 on board that they shifted, and it's got a really cool ability, and a quest for two. So and the other cards as well, I don't think are too bad in the list. I really like I don't see it as much anymore, but I really like Jacques. I felt that was a very good way to deal with Hiram to force it to attack. So they just couldn't get the card draw. You didn't get rid of it, but that's always been green purple sort of style. Is their bounce disrupt? The new Lyle cards is very good. You never know what's going to come out, and just minus your law keeps you sort of in check for a little bit. So I think a lot of the decks where they're trying to aggressively get law early on, if you just Lyle, that's enough to set them back. Whereas of course the blue decks like red blue and like red blue, sorry, and blue still. Why did I forget the deck I play? We don't really care if we don't get as much lore at the start because we know we're just going to aggressively get lore at the end. But for a lot of these decks, like even into red purple, you can see like, hey, I'm just going to stop that early lore game for you, and you're going to have to find the lore later on once you've dealt with my Lyle on my board. So yeah, I think they've got a lot working for them. I think they sort of still have a rough match into steel because you can go wide. I said played a game as Artifact, so I queued into it on Connect, and it was just like play a bunch of Smees wide, and they've already got like a little bit of a problem with that because they don't really have any hard removal. They just want you to be in a spot where you're playing something and you can bounce it back, so you have to keep playing it again. So yeah, it's sort of I think it has a few quirks where it sort of struggles with. Our characters are quite a bit cheaper, so versus red blue, they've still got the big Sisu, so if they can get that out in an adequate time, it could set back your game plan on green purple. But like I said, I like that they've got these shift bigger things in the deck now as well. Like the Ursula is pretty cool. It's a 4/7 quest for 3. You can force exert a Hiram as well. And even the Clarabelle is kind of cool. I mean, it's going to force like heavy removal rather than just like here's a Sisu whiteboard. So yeah, I think it has a lot to work with. I think you could be confident to bring that to an event as well. So I think I'll put it in A tier. The green blue cow deck. I really rate this quite highly. I don't know if it's A tier. I yet to see how it struggles too much. There's been some players who've piloted it really, really well. I don't know how to put it A or B, but I don't know if there's a sort of thing with earlier on in decks. It's a completely new deck with two color combos we haven't seen before. So there is, of course, going to be that situation where players just won't know how to play against it. It's going to take a little bit of time to learn the matchup, learn what they do. So learn that they go this on that turn and we do this on this turn. And to be honest with you, that's happened a lot for me with Lemon Lime. It's just like I don't know what they're going to do half the time. But as you play the matchup, as you go right, so this is my strengths in the matchup, this is my negatives, and you can sort of play into that more. And I think because Green Blue's so new on the scene, no one really knows the matchup too well, and also they're still building their list, so it's sort of changing quite frequently. I'd love to put it in A tier. I would love to actually just confidently say it's an A tier deck, maybe right at the end of A tier, but I think right now it's still up and coming and B tier. And as I say, this list is for like the start of the set, so maybe by the end of the set I'm rating green blue a lot higher than I have just now. But yeah, as I say, I'm not seeing the strengths too much. I've heard it has some issues. I've seen it played locally. I think it probably has. You have a lot to learn with it. But getting Amuses out, singing one jump ahead, things like that to bounce cards to hand. Again, it struggles because it doesn't have red or steel in it, so it doesn't have any actual hard removal. It's all tempo based and sort of bouncing. You've got Your Welcome and Bruno's and stuff like that, which is kind of cool. But yeah, I think it's too early on for me to say, this is an A tier deck. But like I said, this is an early tier list for the start of the set. Probably by the end, I might be rating it a bit higher. Purple Steel. I'm gonna rate it a bit above there. I'm gonna put it in B tier. I don't think it's bad at all by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think it's bad. I don't know. Maybe because I play enough blue steel into it, where it's just throw a Tamatoa on the board, and they're like, oh god, how do I deal with that? Because they're in a sense they don't have a clean answer for that. And if you have a Cogsworth next to it, it's even harder. They've got like strength, or if they've got 8 characters, Zeus, and then like some more actions into it. So yeah, I sometimes feel it falls behind, but overall it's so consistent as a deck because it has the purple, and it's basically a red purple variant, but instead of using the late game red removal, it's using the steel removal, so it gets a really strong early mid game. And then that sort of teeters off. So if you ever watch a purple steel play against a red purple, you'll find that the purple steel needs to do a lot of its work early on, and the red purple needs to basically just hold out until the late game, so it gets its red ladies, its Medusas, and stuff like that to just win the board back, be prep it, do what it needs to do. So yeah, I mean, easily I'd say it's not like low down. I'd still say you could play the deck, but I don't see it overperforming too well, and I don't believe they got too many cards. I do like the new builds with it. As I say, I'm talking about the blue steel, the purple steel, just sort of standard Robin Hood mid-rangey one, as that's probably going to be the most popular one. But the dock one, it catches me off guard. It's one I actually really want to build. I got V Wonderland's list, which looks really awesome. It was like $80 to build as well, so I'm definitely going to build that and try and play that because I really like the idea of that dot card, and I really like the idea of approaching aggro not just with Daisy. I think that'd be very fun. So yeah, I'm gonna put that high B tier. Easily, again, like I say, this is an early tier list for the meta. So how much I've played, so I could easily see that rotating up one if it has enough results and enough players sort of do well with it. Um, I've I don't really know about this one. I'd probably just put it. I know I saw some lists that are rating it quite highly. I'm going to end up not putting any lists in C or D, am I? But I don't think it's that great. I don't really know where it stands. So when I'm talking about this color combination, I'm talking about the green and amber, no, green and ruby, and I've seen sort of Speci play it a bit, and it's interesting with the Robin Hood sort of to pull the actions out, and then the actions can be used. So there's a 1/4 Robin Hood. You quest with it, and then you look at the top four, I believe it is, and any actions in there you get to play for free. So you could theoretically do a bunch of fun actions. A lot of the time it's like brawl a thing, or you could use any of the green actions as well, like You Are Welcome or Bruno, I guess, or just any of the actions you've got at all. So you could get really expensive actions like 8 cost ones. I've seen Speci use with the pirates, I think it's called Pirate's Life or something, which is they lose 2 law and you gain 2 law. Um, I think yeah, it's got some. I think maybe it goes in my opinion with the green blue again. I haven't seen enough of it to be proven that it's very good. It seems interesting, and I'm sure when I play against it, it'll catch me off guard because I don't entirely know what the full list does because there just isn't enough data to see it being played. But even on the current Ink Dex lists, I haven't seen it perform very well. I'd imagine it doesn't struggle with card draw because you've still got a green for some reason. They've given like an insane amount of card draw. You've got the Clarabelle, Diablo, Prince John. Like for a color that used to struggle with card draw, they now seem to have quite a lot of it. So yeah, I'm gonna put that sort of the lower end of B tier, but I don't by any means think it's off meta. I think it's still pretty good. Um, yeah, I'm just gonna put that. I don't have too much else to say about it. I'm just gonna rate it low and then be yelled at by people who actually like that color combination in that deck. It's the green ruby. I think it's like action control or something would be the best way to describe it. Hyper aggro. Of course, the argument is it's A or above. I have not been completely sold on it. I think a lot of people were scared of it because it was quite hyped. So people just shoved a lot of fire the cannons, brawls like Cogsworth, the 1 drop. Rafiki's Pinocchio, just loads of stuff in their list, Ruby Chromacons, everything just to deal with it. And I am still in the opinion that Hyper Aggro doesn't exist in a meta where everyone's aware of Hyper Aggro being a deck. A lot of the, I mean, I can use for an example another deck in that color combination is the Purple Fassa, which won one of the regionals, which is awesome to see. And let's be honest, no one was talking about that deck before it won that regional. So I feel aggro in Lorcana, the way it sort of has to come through is it has to basically be in a meta where the world's sort of given up on it, or like not really thinking about it. People haven't really got answers for it in their list, um, and it can sort of wheedle its way in and get like games against people who aren't aware of it. There's the idea that in a best of two format you could take the draw play, aggro them because they're unaware of what you're playing and they're just going to play their normal curve, and then on the play win because you're an aggro deck and you usually just win all your games on the play. So yeah, I think it's a very interesting deck. I think it's just just fallen the mark. I mean, even in best of two, I still think that player's not. That's not an overly thing. It's not something I could overly confidently say is good. I still think everything is better than green, purple. With the Chromacons, you can get to a point where it's just draw a bunch of cards, flood. You have the knowledgeable thing. What's it called? Ancient wisdom or something like that. You've basically got eight lore built into the deck just from the fact that you can just play it and gain two, and then on top of that you have goats. So and then four goats. So you've already got quite a lot of your lore gained from not even questing lore. You just have to play a thing. So I think it's still very good, and I still think it fries very well. I put the anti sort of aggro-y stuff into my list, and then I haven't taken it out because Steel Song and so many strong shift lines with Clarabelle as well are still like lingering around. So yeah, I'd just sort of keeping it a little bit there. I think versus a lot of decks that have bouncers in, it sort of struggles with because they don't really care if you draw a bunch of cards. The idea of the way that the Chromacon and the draw power works, in my opinion, is you're drawing a bunch of cards, you play them, they either get their value or they take a removal card from your opponent's hand. But with the sort of green steel bouncing or the green blue bouncing or even the lemon lime bouncing with the muses, you just return it to their hand. And then they're like, right, okay, cool. I guess I'll ink it then. Or like, it doesn't seem as bad. And I find most players who are playing muses and playing bounce tempo cards like Mother Gothel and stuff like that say, oh yeah, no, I just farm games from Hyper Aggro. So yeah, I think it's got a few strong three weak matchups. Into Steel Song, it's the weaker of the two in my opinion. And because Steel Song utilizes the wheel, they don't really care about the Chromacon drawing cards as much because they're like, I'm just going to reset your hand anyway if I want to. But the thing is, they probably wouldn't do that. They'd probably just sit on it and make sure if they get a Chromacon and they are getting like a healthy amount of hands, maybe they'll wheel for answers or whatever. But I feel, yeah, even into those matchups is kind of weaker. Into red blue, of course, it should be taking those 2-0 just easily. Maybe on the draw it struggle a little bit more if they can get ramp Medusa or ramp B prep. But the Chromacons really changed the game for that list. Now they don't have to try and find card draw from rabbits or friends or something like that. They just have a item that they can click and draw a card from. So that's pretty good. I still, yeah, it still hasn't lost its flavor too much, but I just don't think I'd be confident bringing that to bigger events, and that's sort of why it never really brought me to play it very well. But yeah, I'm gonna stop talking about that list because it's good. It's A tier. It's just, I mean, that might be one that falls down. We'll see. But I'm gonna stop saying strong opinions on that list because I'm gonna get in trouble. Next one is Blurple, the old classic Blurple. I have seemed to test and play with a lot of Blurple players, and it seems the deck has a bit of a identity crisis, I could say. I don't know. I think that some of the issues is when they came into it, a lot of them were very excited to use the Merlin card, which is shift the Floodborn Merlin, which is shift the card, and then you can search your deck for any card you want. I know a lot of Blurple players went, well, we did that, and we found there wasn't really any card we wanted to grab out of the Blurple list, because they're all just consistently decent cards. You mean, you've got purple in there, which is just known for being the consistent colour. And then you've got the idea of, well, which draw package do we want to use? Some people were trying to use the Hiram one, which I think is the one you don't want to use if you've got purple draw. They were like, well, we'll use the rabbit draw, we'll use the rabbit bounce package draw. And then it's like, well, our win con is Elsa. What else is our win con? Some are using Dime, some are not using Dime. So I feel it does have a bit of an identity crisis, and maybe I'm wrong there, and someone has got a perfect list. I still think it's a strong list. The only time I ever fear it is when I go against one that has Cogsworth in it, because then we're just in this situation where we're just doing a Cogsworth battle. We're not doing a Blue Steel versus Blurple. It's just who's got Cogsworth down. That sort of same old nutshell. So it feels very similar to the Blue Steel Mirror. But when some of them aren't taking it because I think they just think board's going to get reset, or they just don't think the card has much value. I don't know really. But I noticed some of them were dropping it. So yeah, I don't know if it's A tier. I think it's probably strong B tier, maybe going closer to the A tier as well. And oh god, maybe I'll still Blue Steel for the last afterwards. Alas, because these two are pretty much just going to be D tier, they're unplayable. Yeah, I think it's pretty strong. I'd like to be proven wrong and go up the tier list, to be honest with you, but right now it's probably just a strong B tier deck. I'm not seeing it perform amazingly. It's got the Madam Mim dragon in it. I still don't know why that's there. But I've seen it played once against me, and it was like, cool, and then I was just turn sideways win. But yeah, maybe to return the else's. I think it's not a bad list, not a bad deck, but I think it's had a long time as well to try prove itself that it's better than it was. And I know we're getting new cards with it, but I think besides adding the Elsa and the Elephant, they didn't really add much. So it's had a long time to prove itself strong, and it hasn't still done that. People have played it at regionals, people have played it at store champs, and won store champs with it, but that's never an amazing test of strength for a deck. But yeah, I think maybe a strong B tier list. Hopefully, it could move up this set. Maybe the new Elsa card and the new Elephant is that good. Mufasa or Bufasa. I think it's pretty good. I was gonna rate this as just like it's gonna be S tier when I first started. I thought, yeah, it's really strong. Um, I think it's gonna take the meta by storm. And mainly because Bucky was one of the reasons why it wasn't getting played. I'll just leave it there for a sec. Bucky was one of the main reasons it wasn't getting played. So I thought when the Bucky comes out, Mufasa can move forward because we had such a strong looking deck at the start of set four, and then we realised it couldn't play against Bucky, so we had to drop it. So I thought, great, Bucky's gone, we can now play it. That it just doesn't seem like it's pull through as strong as it has. It's still a very good deck. It still has loads of matchups it can farm against. It's very happy when you wheel it, because it's not playing that many card draw things. But still, Song will probably still be quite strong versus it because what they want to do is play fragile characters like a damaged Mulan or a damaged Mother Gothel, hopefully heal it. They could just ping that off and then say, right, I'm not going to wheel you and just going to play one character a turn. So yeah, I think into Blue Steel, of course, it's by one of our enemies. It's behind Red Blue. It's some people might even rate it higher as a worst matchup. I think that's just preference on how many times you've played into either of them. I think it's still really strong deck. I'm actually going to rate it though, probably one of the strongest B tier lists. I don't think it falls into A tier. I still maybe it's on the cusp or something. Maybe it's like on the line between being a B and an A tier, being an A tier deck, because I don't know, it's never seems to pull very strong through in regionals. I've seen some of the lists and it never really. I don't think much has changed from it. They didn't gain too much from it. I saw people trying out cards like the new Wreck-It Ralph, a few other little bits, but yeah, I think it's a strong B tier going into A tier. I think you could win a lot of store champs with it. I think it'd be risky to take it to a regional, but it could still have a good run and get through. So yeah, I'd say maybe a strong B tier list, and yeah, maybe just behind Purple Steel. I don't know. I want to put them. No, I think Fast is probably still better than that. So yeah, I'll put it that there. Ruby Amethyst. I mean, just the consistency. God, it never dies. Every set, it seems to always live. And just the standard bounce package Ruby Amethyst. So yeah, I mean, this is instantly it earns its place in A tier. I don't think it's ever going to be. I think a lot of people put it as S tier. I think it is probably quite close to being S tier. It never seems to die. It didn't really get anything this set. I don't think. I think people tried out Elsa, and then I saw lists basically returning to normal. The library card's pretty cool, but not everyone's playing that. I think maybe it does just earn its place in S tier because it's just so consistently good, and I'd be very confident if you brought that to an event. I don't think it's terrible. I think actually maybe just for that reason, because it's not standing out too much, it does just go in A tier. It does go above these ones, maybe a bit behind Lemon Lime because I'm saying Lemon Lime's on the line there. So yeah, it's the consistency god. It doesn't have any amazing matchups. It's not like and I destroy that deck. Maybe Red Blue because it does quite well into Red Blue. But then again, it's just overall very consistent in what it does. It's never really falling behind. It's just I kind of almost want to put it in S tier really, but yeah, it's still Song can be a bit tricky sometimes. You need to know how to navigate that. Discard can still be tricky if you don't know how to play that matchup. Lemon Lime can if they can get the aggressive beat down on you and discard your cards, that's hard. It doesn't really have steal removal, so it doesn't struggle into hyper aggro, but you know it has that tricky matchup into hyper aggro, and that's sort of maybe why it earns its. Yeah, I'm gonna keep it in A tier. That's why it earns its A tier. It's like every matchup you think about it has against the deck. It's like yeah, you know it has like loads of strength and loads of bad stuff as well. So yeah, I think yeah it just sort of keeps in a strong A tier position, and that's sort of where the deck wants to be. The deck doesn't want to be highly teched against. It doesn't want to be like the prime target, which is these two for the set right now, like the two top dogs that everyone's thinking about. Ruby Amethyst is always like, you know it's going to be there. You just make sure your deck can beat it, and then you just play because you can't really stomp it like that hard. You just got to make sure you have a decent matchup into it. So yeah, I kind of think it's just always going to be a strong A tier deck. I mean, in set two, it was probably like S tier. It wasn't. It was like 70% of the meta. It was S tier. But yeah, I think it's just kind of getting in this really good spot where it's just strong all the time. You watch it and you see it lose and you go, that was fair. You watch it and you see it win, you go, that was fair. You never really think it's been cheated out of a win, and you never see it like you don't think it's won too hard in situations. It doesn't really brick that much. It just plays on curve. Ruby Amethyst is just it's the entry deck for people into competitive Lorcana. It's also the one that you can stick with. It's a jack of all trades. It's just a really strong deck, so I'm just probably gonna keep it in A tier for the rest of its lifespan. Green Steel, and when I'm talking about this one, it's the new bounce package Clarabelle deck. I'm not really going to call it discard because it does play like You're Welcome and stuff like that. And because of Clarabelle, it requires or sometimes needs you to have quite a lot of cards in hand. I think this deck's just great. I struggle versus it quite a lot. I'm going to put it into the tip end of A tier. I think it's very good. I think the Clarabelle card's kind of sleeper, and I think with I just the way I like to play. I struggle playing decks that do like bounce and tempo because I'm just like I don't want that thing on the board. I want to kill it, so I'm going to use removal to kill it. So like green purple's like, well, let's bounce it around. Let's do stuff like that. Lemon lime's like, let's bounce and let's discard. I just like steel or red, where it's just like I want that thing gone and I want it to die. So I feel green steel is very well paired with the Clarabelle version that we're seeing. When I play against it, it feels so strong. They've still got all of these steel like lines they can play. They've got Robin Hoods and like Let the Storm Rage on Ursula. They haven't lost any of that strength. They just basically took the Diablo Bucky stuff out and they've gone, we're going to use Mother Gothels and Clarabelle to bounce around and keep the board in check. So I think it's very strong. Actually, I think I'd rate it above green purple. Sorry, Artifacts. I really like it. The player Fumbles has done a video on it, which is I've tweeted about it. It's well worth checking out. I think I'm not even going to call it a sleeper deck because people are aware of it. It's just very good. I think it beats Hyper Aggro quite strong, but it still has some struggling issues. It can brick sometimes. Green still just I still think Hyper Aggro as an overall has just better matchups in general. So and you can just have some better clean runs with Hyper Aggro. But Green still does very much destroy Hyper Aggro in matchups. Oh, the more I'm talking myself just moving it up one. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I'm gonna move it up another one, and yeah, I'm gonna keep it like that. Actually, yeah, the more I talk about it, the more I think it's better than Hyper Aggro. I think I'd feel more confident bringing the Green Steel Clarabelle Bounce in Mother Gothel deck than I would be Hyper Aggro. And it's worth mentioning with the Green Steel, we still got access to the Flynn Merfolk builds that we saw in set 3. They're coming back. I just haven't seen much presence of them, so I'm just not going to talk about them too much until we see it at a bigger event, or a 1K, a 2K, or a regional. So I'm just going to keep it there. But yeah, I think that deck's really strong. And Blue Steel. All right, I'm not going to just straight up put it into S tier as much as I'd love to do that because I don't think it's S tier. I think it's struggling quite a bit in this meta. I think matchup spread wise, though, I think what's happened to the deck, in my opinion, is the deck has fallen into a spot where Ruby Amethyst is at, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think overall it's a very toolbox deck. We're not singing and screaming about any matchups we have that are really good. Where in the past set, everyone was saying how good our matchup was into Green Steel, and like just in the end when we got the Argus set up, how good our matchup was into Ruby Amethyst. I think just overall we don't particularly lose that hard into many things. Lemon Line can be a struggle for us. Red Blue can be a struggle for us. Mufasa can be a struggle for us. But I don't think they're at this point now where they're just sharp losses. So I think we still have worse matchups than Ruby Amethyst. And Ruby Amethyst flat, like, doesn't drop below 40% win rates versus like every deck. It's just overall good, and then you skill it. But Blue Steel, there are some matchups when I queue into them on Connect. It's like I don't want this matchup. I want to go against Ruby Amethyst, or I want to go against the Steel deck. So I think it's still very strong. I still think it's not bad. I think it's I think that's probably where I'd put it. Actually, I really want to move faster up. I think I'm going to move faster up. I'm going to move faster up to there. Yeah, because that was upsetting me to put it in B tier. I scrap everything I said about faster. Like I said, I was putting it on the line. I think it's blue tier. I think it's A tier. Sorry, that was just going from my head the entire time I was looking at it. I was like, no, I'll move faster up one. But yeah, with Blue Steel, I think we have a decent matchup spread. There's definitely a room where you can take it and you just get a nice run to the finish and win. as well versus some people who have this was trying to put this in the least weirdest way, but because Bucky's gone, there was a big group of players that needed to find a new home, and a lot of them found it in Steelsong because the sort of story was going that Steelsong was the new busted deck. And I don't know, the type of players they were on Bucky because Bucky was labelled as this free win busted deck. Sort of meta follower type players, and I don't know. Take offense to that if you want. There's someone at my local. I said that to them, and they said, "Yeah, no, it's fine. That's what I am." So I'm just gonna say it, and I'm just gonna live with it. That I think that's a term, and you got to accept it. So they were like, right, we need to follow the next busted deck. What is it? Steel Song, and a lot of them picked up Steel Song. And you play into it, and there's still like, if you've just played a lot of blue steel, you know how to use the deck very well. You can win that matchup because they've just picked up Steel Song, and the mulligan's hard on that deck. There's lots of moments for skill. It's not a simple Bucky then play Floodborns. It's doing like doing different lines with shift lines, knowing which songs to use, knowing when to use bare necessities, knowing when to wheel, knowing when not to wheel. There's a lot there. So Steel Song takes a little bit of time to get used to and learn it, and it has like a lot of depth to it. And that's where I'm finding with Blue Steel. Just I think because it's a wheel deck, you have so many options. You can do the maths of like, right, I'm at like 13 lore, but a Tamato a dime wins me the game. So I'm going to ramp down, I'm going to put loads in the inkwell, and then we're going to build up that win con of getting 7 lore in a turn. You could do some fun things like that. So I think there's loads of room for you to push the deck further and win. I mean, and then it sort of just stopped where sometimes you'll play against Ruby Sapphire, and there's just generally no way you could have navigated that win. They're just going to be the fact that they ramp and you've wheeled them because you had to wheel. They're going to win. So yeah, I think it's got loads of room for. It's got a high ceiling for skill. I'm just telling it like Blue Steel players are amazing, but yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to move it around rather than. You'll have a matchup where it'll be Ruby Amethyst versus Blue Steel, and you've got Quill set up 5 drops, sing wheel, and they're just playing smaller drops and turning sideways, and it's like you won. You just basically have to not majorly brick from this wheel. And they don't really have anything they can do to get themselves in the fight. They'll just flood and try and turn sideways. So yeah, I think Blue Steel is centered in like the mid A table right now. I think it's a very strong pick, and there's so many cards for us to play with that can bring it either way. There's been some interesting lines where people have played Mickey. The gentleman who's at top of Pixelmon Connect right now, I saw his list. It's Mickey, Donald Duck, the one that ramps now, and then you get access to 7 drops, so you can get Hades, Arthur, and the Big Simba. So you get this like long line of decks that were not as accessible before, but because now you've got this like ramp, you can do the really cool access to them, which I think is really nice. And you can do it on curve with characters on board rather than Quill into the inkwell and then find it. I mean, Quill will still give you access to it, so that's cool as well, but you'll be at 8 ink, and it kind of feels a bit weird, but yeah. So yeah, I think there's like loads of depth to it as well. And these two, I mean, like it was fun, the pirate thing, but let's be honest, I think in this meta now we're getting such tight and refined list with so many cards. It's just proven that deck isn't really a deck. Maybe put it in C tier, why not? Must be nice. But yeah, and I don't think I've ever seen a deck with that 2 color combo, and if I have, I haven't seen it perform particularly well. So yeah, I'll just be nice and put them in C tier. um, Actually, I'd keep it down in D tier. But yeah, I think that's sort of where I'd place things. As I say, this is an early set. This is like a couple weeks in before any major events or anything like that. But if you're going to one this weekend or something like that, or you're playing soon, this is how I would view the meta right now. And that, yeah, maybe that'll give you some thoughts.